Welcome to another episode of the Fresh Blerd Aired podcast. I am your host, Black Thanos, and I am joined today by Michael. How do you, I'm horrible with names. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Ben Elohim.
Ben Elami?
Ben Elohim.
Ben Elohim?
Elohim, like in the biblical Elohim.
Oh, okay. Ben Elohim.
Elohim with an H.
Oh, Elohim.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for thank you for coming through today. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of homeschooling.
Okay, cool.
Tell the people about yourself and what you do.
Right now I'm a homeschool consultant. I started sometime back in around 2011, looking at alternative options to educating my son. I was a single father, so I was one of those parents that sit in the back of the classroom to kind of observe how the classroom moves throughout the day and make sure my child's getting the proper attention and education. I'm a very involved parent. And so I found that I wasn't really getting the results that I needed after a while. And so I began to do some research on homeschooling in general. And then I actually came upon some people on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just kind of African Americans, kind of just showing that we have that option. We have a right to homeschool your kids. It's not like it's a hard process to get started with. And then where I was living at the time was Connecticut. So the Black population in Connecticut is like 5% maybe. 5 to 7%. So there were no options in the state as far as homeschooling options for African American people. And so I began to do some research. I had already been heavily involved in nonprofits and youth education and green skills and a lot of different categories related to enriching young people as well as adults. So
Right.
I got to a point where I said, well, if I'm doing this for my community, why can't I do it for my child? And so that was the beginning of where I'm at. And so now I'm at about 12 years now doing this. I have an online website, a free website actually. I've done a book related to this particular topic, and I'm always offer myself as a listening ear and advisor to people who are just curious if that's all they're at, but people who also want to make a long-term commitment to homeschooling related to their children as an option. So,
Like when it comes to, because I went to school myself. I never even thought about homeschooling. I actually did some research on it. Um,
mm-hmm.
when it comes to, I guess getting to the pros and cons. Because nothing is like ever perfect. It's always, something has some type of flaw, or it may be a downside to something, or maybe a good side. Uh, let's talk about the flexibility that comes with doing homeschooling.
Okay. I'd say one of the things I kind of focus on early when I'm educating people about homeschooling is that you can do it while you have a job. You have a lot of working parents, whether they're single parents or a fully intact family. There's time to be made, within the day-to-day adult things that we find ourselves having to do. There's
Mm-hmm.
things that you can find time to integrate your child into your actual day-to-day lifestyle, whether it is work, if you're working from home, for example. That's what I was doing at the time. So one thing I would do is I had access to a lot of different resources. I lived in New Haven, Connecticut. So I had Yale University, all these museums and galleries and cultural opportunities to expose my son to.
Right.
And so one of the things I'd say to people is this: if you really want to approach it and you're seeking flexibility, think about the fact that when your child's in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
the real world is going on while they're in that building. They have they don't know what's going on outside of that particular building.
Right.
And so when you choose to homeschool your child, you're actually giving them access to the world as it is happening in real time. And so, for example, one trip might be go down to City Hall and look at the different opportunities at your local city hall, right? So
Right.
you find the mayor's office. You can do political education. You can find a youth services office to find out what opportunities you can provide for your child while they're being homeschooled. So there's a lot of things, but we don't often make ourselves present to these things. The resources are often there. The thing that got me was the fact that you do legal research because people are so concerned about can I get locked up for homeschooling my child?
Yeah.
One of the statutes regarding my state's board of education at the time was that the number one right you have as a parent is to educate your child. So it's not something that can be taken away from you. It's an innate right you have having a child that needs education.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that I found the opportunity. I said, wow, so that means that the school system has resources for children who do not go to school.
Right.
But you're not told about those resources because the desire is, of course, let's get them in the building and let them
Yeah.
do what they do. Until you realize they have the same opportunities and resources available if you chose to homeschool. One thing about time, right? If you're working or you're a full-time parent, the flexibility can be challenging when you consider if you work at night and then you need sleep and you got kids at home that are waking up when you're getting home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's those those realities. So employment is important when you consider what it is you do to make a living. A lot of homeschooling parents I've found already do little crafts or they have side gigs that they just fully aren't committed to because they got to pay bills, right? The income doesn't
Right.
come in quick enough to kind of sustain themselves independently. So no different than you'd approach buying a new car. You can approach putting money aside to fund your homeschooling endeavors for your children. When we're talking about flexibility, we're also talking about how expensive it could be. Can you afford to do so with time and finances?
Cool. What about let's talk about I guess personalized learning.
You mean personalized, like specific to the student?
Yeah, like when I guess tailored to the curriculum of the child's it's an individual needs, but I would say probably mostly try to focus on what they're not good at and try to better that part.
Great. That's a great question. I actually would approach that as the core of the curriculum in my approach. I believe that the things that you lack at can become strengths, right? It's
Yeah.
just a matter of applying the time to break it down in order for you to master it, right? And then you have a balance. You'll be a well cultured individual. And so one example would be, you have children now with the age of technology, they're into tablets and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest, again, because attention is a thing, right?
Yeah.
For children. So have you ever seen a young person be so attached to the tablet they don't want to do anything else but be on the tablet,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in my thought process, I often say, well, if they're not really that good at reading, I would probably want them to not read on the screen on the tablet because it's as simple as swiping off whatever content you got them doing, right? It's a distraction within a distraction.
Yes.
And so the approach would have to be removal of certain things, like let's say how much access to technology a child has, and then go back to our own traditional methods of here's this book. This is why we're reading this book. There's a vocabulary list for this book. So I think about how I was educated, and what I had access to. I had a book bag that I'd walk home from school, and it had a heavy book, hardcover of every subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were expected to retain that information, right? At that time, I'm
Right.
not sure how old you are, but we were expected to retain that information based on what the teacher assigned. And so now, the average child doesn't have a book bag full of heavy books, right? They got a Google Chromebook. The assignments are already pre-sent to them. It's mostly YouTube centered.
Yeah.
you know, I was a substitute teacher for some time when I initially got down here. So watching that, I said, well, if you want to improve reading, you actually have to read. So they need physical, still need to touch and see and smell things. That's still the number one way in which we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as I'd say, see, I'm from the '90s. I had access to the internet early. I understood the how it could benefit us and how it could become what it is now, right?
Yes.
And so there's something lost in not having that hybridization, right? So even though the children have access to technology, there's a lot of information on YouTube, Google, and the internet. They still need to touch and come in contact with the real principles and disciplines that come with learning. There's no responsibility if you just pull up a tablet and hit play on a YouTube video and let it play. There's responsibility if I need you to highlight the sections in this book.
Right.
You know, it's essential. Those are the things that build a well-disciplined learner, especially one that might be challenged about how well they are at something. Um, I like doing in a roundabout way, using art as a form of therapy in learning.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding homeschooling is a very big, big, big thing that I like to promote. Um, because you can put every subject, every social cue, every social challenge into an artistic format and deliver it. Um, and a lot of what I'm speaking on, I teach or advise parents on how to get started with creating a homeschool culture. Your home is your center. That's
Right.
your home. And so part of most important thing is kind of identifying your household for what it is, its own strengths and weaknesses, because that's
Yeah.
what's going to be supporting the student.
Pretty much.
you know, yeah. So it's not just student focused; it's family focused. In regards to my approach towards homeschooling, I think that even in the instance where people would be deterred, want to say one of the cons would be, oh well, I don't have a high school diploma. How can I homeschool my child? Well, now you're going to have to learn with them.
Pretty much.
Period. That's it. That's just how. If it's that serious for you regarding your child's education, then you're gonna have to do it. I've seen people do it on numerous occasions. Go and get their high school diploma and stuff because they're saying they don't want their child to get a high school diploma before them.
Oh yeah.
Time flies.
Even like another benefit for homeschooling is like I guess getting that one-on-one aspect because it's hard to get a one-on-one when you're in school because the teacher has to focus on like so many other students and they can't just focus just on you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on that. Bullying is non-existent in homeschool unless you're bullying your own child, right?
Hmm.
Peer pressure is non-existent, which is an extreme distraction in a school setting, right? Peer
Right.
pressure. So now you don't have to worry about that as a distraction. And you'll find if you structure the child's curriculum around their interests, right? So you got your interests, you have your essentials, that's your core subjects, right?
Right.
And then you get to what we talked about earlier, the things they're not good at, you know. Now you don't go as hardcore on the things they're not good at if they're, depending upon, you measure your child's temperature. If they
Yeah.
can take it, if they can take it, then you do, you put the work in and see how they respond. A lot of a lot of the confidence that many parents aspire for their child to get from the school system, they don't get it. The children aren't demonstrating it. And so is think about the teacher being responsible for motivating and inspiring your child. And what if that person's not an inspiring person?
Yeah, that's,
You know?
that would be real. It's like it'll be real hard because you don't know if you're not that inspiring person. You're trying to figure out, all right, how am I going to inspire him? But I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Right, right. So then you're dealing with, again, we got a school system with a large young population as far as teachers are concerned. Um, you don't have those long tenured teachers working anymore. You know, let's say people who are doing it for a purpose versus a job, not to take anything away from teachers who are doing it, for purposeful reasons. But um, that one-on-one for a child to see their parent be inspired enough to educate them and then show them possibilities that the school system can't show them is monumental. We always see on social media, Instagram or YouTube, where they have these black children who are like graduating at 8 years old. These children
Hmm.
are homeschooled. They're not going to they're not in a
Yeah, they're
building.
not ain't going to no
their
regular
parents are
school.
their parents are cultivating them, again, based on their interests, the essentials. And see, the thing about the school system is like it's like a time release drug. So your kids are in school, and even though they're getting A's and so forth, they can't move any farther than that until they pass the next grade, right?
Right,
Your child might be ready to go to the next grade halfway through the school year, but can't, right? So
right.
time is being wasted. So this is where you start seeing opportunities for a child to at least have some extra curricular education come into play. But
Hmm.
often that's not something that our community participates in necessarily. I'm not saying we treat school like it's a daycare, but we really do put a large responsibility on the current governmental school, public education.
Yeah,
Yeah, we know the results. We're products of it, right? We did
pretty
we
much.
did the
Yeah.
best we did the best we can with it. But when you see what's coming and how, you know, the literacy rates and just the ability to actually write, cursive came out 20 some odd years ago in many places.
I still
Just
have I still have problems with cursive
speak on that.
because that's one of the main reasons why I don't write checks because it's just because I know my signature is like I barely even do my signature, and then when I finally found one to actually like, all right, this is gonna work, I stuck with that. I'm like, it ain't gonna get no better. This is as long as I know what it says, that's it. Because
Okay.
I can print my ass off. I can print like ain't no tomorrow. And like when it come to cursive, I'm like, I don't know about that. I think
Right.
I tell my mother every time, like if she writes something for me, I'm like, print it. Do not put it in cursive because I'm not gonna be able to read it.
Right.
Um,
There's something I wanted to speak on related to the pros was often often our people perceive something different as something that could get you in trouble, right? And
mhm.
so there's some areas of in homeschooling, like for example, you can get financial aid being a homeschool student. So you get the same opportunities as a person that went to high school did. You can take the same high level AP courses as well, regarding high school and things like that. And then even if you, again, a lot of things can be tested out of.
Yeah,
The same way a person who's affluent in certain things in their career and they want to go back to school, you can test out of a lot of different things. And so the opportunities are never lacking. If you have a child that's excellent at math, we talk about STEM a lot. Um, they can start engineering from home
Yeah.
You know, the kits are out there. Um, a lot of these things are guided. There's guided methods of instruction and video format. The thing that got me started as far as curriculum was a brother named Samori Kamara. He was in Louisiana, and he's got the Kamali Academy. And so he created a K through 12 curriculum. You know, it's an African centered curriculum, and so in it it has the content you would need to adequately be educated to per grade. You know,
Right.
it's not necessarily copying. This is something else I want to speak on. It's not necessarily copying the European standard. It's saying that you're smart enough to create your own standard. The information is free. You know, in the world we currently live in, more than
Yeah.
ever, right? So there's really no excuse unless you just are too busy or you're committed to other things and so on and so forth. As far as like people who aren't, you know, who are conflicted with homeschool as an option versus like, man, I want to put my kid out because I want to teach him this, but the school can't teach him that, and there's not enough time in the day. You know, if you break down the time in the day for a child, right?
Right.
And this study came out years ago, but it said your child spends more time with the school system than you. You know,
Yeah.
as you work, let's say you get up in the morning, your child goes to school for maybe 8 hours. You work 8 hours out the day. They get home. You have to feed them, do homework, get them ready for bed for the next day. You know,
And pretty
that's
much,
the
it's like
that's
a
the challenge.
that's
That's
their job, which I say we have our job. So we're like, yeah, he's saying we're both doing 8 hours and we're coming home, and then still gotta, because you still gotta continue on because you gotta work when you come home. You gotta feed them homework in bed.
right. And so when you think about the time invested, right? Homeschooling isn't 8 hours of schooling, you know, per day.
Hmm.
There's aspects of cultivating that go outside of just the essential subjects. You know, now you can, you know, if you had electives in college, you can have electives for your homeschool student.
Hmm.
Um, and that can be across categories. And you can make it relative to what the core expectations are of your state. You know, um, just understand that it's gonna be you're gonna be doing things that the kids in school just aren't doing. They're not even exposed to.
Pretty much. That's like, yeah, it's like you're doing the stuff that, like teaching, maybe teaching them something like this is what the school is supposed to actually teach you, or they
Right,
just
right,
like, all right, this is what we got, this is what was given, all right, it's on this paper, and now go figure it out.
right. I had a family some years ago that I was consulting, and they had 4 children, and all their kids were good at different things, but it was all related to numbers and finance. So they had one kid that was on banking and accounting. Another one was on like real estate and paperwork and all these different things. It was only based on learning these things as a trade for them to use when they get older, and then they just rotated them.
Yeah.
You know, so now these kids are 15, 16 and financially mature, more mature than the average adult.
Right.
You know, ready for the world. So those are like examples where you can definitely get some success. One of the things I think I haven't spoken on cons too much, but there's some cons where um, being honest with oneself where they're at in their life, you know, it's not worth sacrificing or making things more complicated. You know,
Yeah.
um, work with the networks that are available versus pull your kid out of school and be stuck with them home and not knowing what to do. You know, a lot of people do that prematurely, and they don't even have someone to consult with to advise them on what are the proper steps of doing that to make sure when your kid comes home, if they're going to be home, you have just as much of a supportive structure at home as the school system did for them. You know, but it's your institution. The home is an institution of its own, so you have to create rules and all these different things, really to get your child to understand the importance of importance in why they're being homeschooled. Like people talk
Right.
about socialization. You look at our current society. Like, do you really want to socialize your kids more into the society, or do you want to kind of like pull them back and like allow for them to understand it from a different perspective? Like we got this birth by fire thing that we like to just say,
Like just
well,
talking about
they
their
got to go and
like talking to the wolves. All right, you're gonna have to learn today.
yeah, we'll figure it out, and we should evolve as a people beyond that, right? To where we have other constructive ways of promoting and advancing our children. People now you hear the big argument about spanking. Oh, they can't spank my kid or whatever. But maybe that's not
Yeah.
the best option anymore. Maybe we should evolve beyond that and build better communication between our children. But you can't do that if this is me promoting homeschooling. You can't do that if your child's in school 8 hours a day and you're someplace else 8 hours a day, and you're coming back with two separate realities coming together. You don't
Yeah.
understand theirs, they don't understand yours. As most adults in our community hide the reality of the world today from our children as much as we can. Because what is it? We don't want them to worry, or we don't want to pollute their minds, and so on. There's constructive ways of even informing your child about today's society on their level.
Mm-hmm.
That has to happen just as much. Again, you want them to be just as aware as you are. Why should your child be walking around wondering and they have a well-informed a whole adult next to them?
Yeah, because you don't want them. You want to, prepare them. Like, this
Right,
is, you going when you get older, you're gonna go out there in the world. So I want to prepare you, so you know what's coming.
right. And that starts. So that would start with every home should have a mission statement. What are the values of this household? Mission statement for your household. And so everybody has a purpose under that mission statement. That's one of the first steps to setting up, a homeschool structure is internal. You know how they always, the school system says, it starts at home. It starts at home. It
Mm-hmm.
does, but we're not home to start anything. We're still in school.
Yeah.
You see the contradiction in that?
I think they were just using that. Like, it's like it starts in the house. Like, no, it doesn't. No,
Right.
like,
They only
it
say that when
doesn't.
there's problems. They only say that when there's problems.
Yeah.
It's mostly when there's a conflict between the student and the institution. Oh, if only the parents were more involved. And again, we have, depending on what generation you grew up in, we had latchkey kids. Their parents were working,
Mm-hmm.
so so you skipped school a lot. You had opportunities to not participate in the system. You kind of like vanguards.
Yeah, because like when you skip, you miss things, and then you gotta catch up in the end.
In the end, absolutely. Again, that's another thing that's eliminated from homeschooling. You have perfect attendance.
It's like, yeah, you can't really. Only way you can be late for homeschool is if you don't get out your bed.
If you don't get out your bed, but you'd have to get that passed by mom or pops or whoever the adult. The teacher would have to give you that. And
Mm-hmm.
something else I want to speak to. A lot of times there's a misconception that you have to do all the teaching. I think the greatest job of a homeschooling parent is the title of the researcher. Because whatever you research is what you're going to retool for your child to digest. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily take outright instruction all
Yeah.
day. It's a matter of providing the task and allowing them to accomplish the task, be there as a supportive in a supportive role. That's extremely important. And then there's a lot of options online if when we're talking about using technology for homeschooling or to improve the quality of homeschooling. You have a lot of websites where you can get trainings. You got Khan Academy and stuff like that. Um, you have a lot of free, you have a lot of free resources online. Like you could homeschool for free if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, and then some people want that natural person to person experience. So you can actually have there's tutors, there's people in your community who might want to participate in educating your child who have a background in a specific subject.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's actually a great thing. Um, and then there's this other part, this component of allowing your child to embrace learning as a teacher student. You know,
Yeah,
that's the part where you're catering to their interests. Because if a child's not interested, they're not going to participate. No different than we as an adult is. You
it's
know,
like if it doesn't pique your fancy, you're not going to really. You'll be like, why am I here?
what am I doing this for? So if you have a child that likes race cars or collecting micro machines and things, we're talking about young children, even the older teens, preteens, and teens. But they have an affinity for vehicles. Like they can tell you whatever car passed by. Myself, for example, you might want to look into automotive engineering in terms of introducing them to these things early in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like instead of just continuing to buy them the race cars from the toy store, take them to an automotive shop. Don't leave them home when you get your brakes done. Integrate the child into life experience.
Because they're going to have to face it
They're
when
gonna
they
have
get
to
older.
deal with this. They're gonna have to deal with this, and it shouldn't be a shock. And for me, one thing I realized when I graduated high school was that I didn't learn anything from them. Nothing that I could. I took French for 2 years, Spanish for 2 years. I'm not fluent in either. There's other subtle things, that play
Yeah.
into how much did you get out of it, and could I have gotten a more enriching experience possibly if I was homeschooled? I could say for sure I would, based on the mind I have,
Mm-hmm.
or how assertive or I am about learning in education. So
At this point of the interview, we're going to get into 5 random questions.
all right.
Favorite school subject?
History.
Favorite least subject?
Math.
Oh man, I hate math. Oh man, I was never.
Oh,
I only. I was like, long as I get a C, I was like, I'm good. I was like, I'm just
right.
trying to get out of here. I was never. That's the thing between me and my brother. He was always good at math. It was like we was like opposite. I was more good of in English and everything, but his math was way better than
Right.
mine. um, Favorite benefit that you have gotten since you started homeschooling?
um, I think it feeds my creativity. Um, Homeschools created the opportunity for me to use my creativity to develop things that are tangible.
Mhm.
you know, um, I've started I have some workbooks online on Amazon, and I created the homeschooling guide for the 20th century, the African American guide. I was inspired through doing it, and I look back and I said, "Wow, I did all of this. And how am I going to deliver this to people in a way that benefits them?" Right? And so I'm in the process of actually this fall. I'll have another line of workbooks out.
Mhm.
It's just basic core subjects, because that's really where things matter. I know you hear people you ever heard an adult say, "Oh, I don't know, we didn't even need to use math because we didn't need to learn it because we don't use it."
Yeah, because math is pretty much part of our everyday lives.
Right,
Because I look at it and be like, I was like, do I really want to do this? But I have to.
right.
'Cause, like, I'm not gonna be able to do what I need to do if I don't do this is math portion as part of what I need to do to get it done.
Right. And so yeah, that and seeing people who actually have some success. There's some students I've had that were homeschooled through the whole process I offer, from middle school through high school, get their transcripts done, and end up at UConn. So um, understanding that my method works. It's not any different than anybody else's homeschool approach. It's just a little more personal. It has a high security. Um, it's security centered. It's more so about safety. Schools aren't safe anymore. You know
Oh
that,
no.
right? So that's another thing. Like the safest place for you and your children are at home on any given day. That's why I'm glad that the opportunities for people to work from home and homeschool is rising, because that is your sanctuary at the end of the day.
That is true.
You know.
Favorite, I guess a dream place to travel to.
I used to say Africa at any part or portion or place,
Mm-hmm.
I really just want to do an American road trip, to be honest with you. Just go from one end and back.
It's good. Least favorite food.
String beans.
Mm.
I can't do it. Can't tolerate it. Yeah, I had a babysitter when I was young, and she tried to make me eat string beans by putting sugar on them, and once I
What?
ate it made it intolerable. I guess assuming that, again, you're thinking the backwards way of thinking, possibly, put a little sugar on it and make it tolerable, and it made it intolerable. And
Oh, it just made it worse.
yeah, it was I can't even do it to this day.
Before we got here, do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, I got a website, goldenhoureducation.com. It's free homeschool resources, downloadable ebooks and documents to assist your child in learning, even if you have them in school and wanted to subsidize some of their education with some more culturally centered or appropriate material. I have that up there. I update it monthly. And then you can through joining it, you gain access to other things as well. Um, what else? What else? If you had any questions, feel free to email me at goldenhoureducation@gmail.com. I do a lot of consulting related to education primarily. And then again, things like small business and web design and things like that. Um, I love the name of your podcast, like Blerd. I was just like, oh my God, I'm just realizing I'm on a Blerd show. This is me. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on your platform and share some information. I hope it helps somebody, think about or consider homeschooling, even if it's just for learning about the process and benefits. So thanks again for that.
Much appreciative. This has been another episode of the Fresh Blerd Air podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe. I am your host, Black Thanos, signing out.